I'm really excited to show you guys how to make my unbound slip over vest. It's a tad cropped and meant to fit, very oversized. I actually knit a size 4. I knit a really large size just because I wanted it to be extremely oversized. I am a 36-inch bust just for reference. So pick a size accordingly. When you look at the finished measurements, that's the size of the completed vest. It is meant to be a little cropped. We're gonna knit this in the round from the bottom up, and then we're gonna separate, knit the back separately, and then you knit the fronts and complete the V-neck, and then you'll seam the top. And then I will show you how to do this really cool V-neck collar here. And then you'll also do ribbing for the sleeves here. So grab your pattern, click the links in the video description to get your copy of the pattern PDF. All the supplies will be listed there. I just did want to mention I use Lion Brand Respun Thick and Quick yarn. You do not have to use the same yarn. Just please make sure you check the gauge. I would say that Lion Brand Respun Thick and Quick is considered a little bit thinner of a super bulky weight yarn. So again, just check your gauge and pick a yarn that works. So download your pattern and let's get started making this really cute slipover vest.
Okay, so we cast on a lot of stitches, so I'm going to make sure I have a long enough tail for my cast on stitches, and I am going to make a slip knot as my first stitch, and I am going to tighten that here and make sure that my stitches are in front of me. My tail is in front, and I'm going to grab the yarn and start casting on my number of stitches slowly. So you grab the yarn and you go under the yarn, around your thumb, over the yarn, around your index finger, and pull through. So I'm just going to continue on here until I have the number of stitches that I need for my cast on stitches. So this vest is knit from the bottom up, so we'll be starting with the bottom ribbing and then working our way up. So I will see you back here when I am ready to join in the round once I have the number of cast on stitches I'm supposed to have for my size. Okay, so I've cast on my total number of cast on stitches for my size. Now it's time to join in the round. I'm actually going to add one extra stitch, cast on stitch. We are going to drop this extra stitch once we join in the round. So first of all, make sure you definitely have the correct number of cast on stitches. Now, when you join in the round, you're going to want to make sure that you don't twist the stitches when you join. So I like to push my stitches to the end because I know I'm going to have to connect them. And then I lay my work flat like this, making sure that nothing's twisted and that that cast on edge is laying flat on the inside of my work. When you join in the round, you need to make sure your stitches aren't twisted. Okay, so we cast on the extra stitch. Now we are going to join in the round. So to join in the round, you take the first stitch on the left-hand needle and slip it over to the right-hand needle. Then we're going to take this extra stitch that we just cast on and slip that over that needle, over that stitch we just moved over. Okay, and then we're simply going to drop that stitch and tighten the work. So now we've joined our work in the round. We're going to place a stitch marker. Oops, that one's not big enough. Let me make sure I've got a big enough stitch marker here. You put the stitch marker on, and this just lets you know that this is the beginning and the end of the round. So now we're going to work one by one rib, and one by one rib is simply knitting a stitch, bringing the yarn in front, and then purling a stitch. And then it's knit, purl, knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, all the way around to the end. And then I'll show you how to slip the stitch marker again and start the new round and continue, so you can continue the one by one rib. Okay, so I'm finishing up my first one by one rib round, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like when you finish a round and start another round. So I have a knit one left and a purl one left, and then all you do is slip the stitch marker and you begin the knit one, purl one again. Knit one, purl one. And you can see you're just knitting the knit stitches and purling the purl stitches for a 1 by 1 rib. Okay, so you're going to continue this for as long as the pattern says to continue it. I usually just give inches or centimeters length for how long things should be instead of just telling you how many rows to knit, because that'll work out differently for everybody. For me, it'll probably be between 8 to 10 rows, so I'll measure that, and I'll see you back here once I have just about completed my bottom ribbing, and it'll be time to then work the body. Okay, so I've completed my ribbing for about 3 inches. You can measure from the bottom of the garment up to where you've knit, and I've completed about 3 inches. So if you want to make your ribbing longer or shorter, feel free. Just make sure you have an understanding of the overall garment length, and if you shift the length of the ribbing, it'll change the overall length of the garment. So just keep that in mind if you're shifting things, that you take into account how it's going to change the overall length of the garment. Okay, so we are finishing. I'm just going to finish this round here and slip my stitch marker, and now we are just going to complete stockinette stitch until it's time to split the back and the front and work the left front and the right front. So in order to keep track of the front and the back, we're going to knit across half of the stitches and then place another stitch marker to keep track of half of the stitches. Half of them will be the front, half of them will be the back. So just knit across, follow your pattern, what your pattern says, how many stitches you need to knit across before you place that stitch marker to denote the front and the back. Okay, so I suggest using a different color stitch marker. You don't have to, you know, the beginning of the round because the tail will be there, but if you use a different color stitch marker, that'll just help you know that you are in the middle of the round instead of at the beginning of the round. Okay, so I'll see you back here when it's time to place that stitch marker. Okay, so I'm at the point where I knit across half of my stitches, and all you do is place the stitch marker on the needles and continue knitting. Okay, so now you're going to want to continue stockinette stitch, which is just knitting every single round, and we call it a round when we're knitting in the round instead of a row, and then when we work flat back and forth, that's when you call it a row. So you're going to continue knitting every round until you get the length that your pattern says to knit to, or the length you would like to knit to the underarm. The underarm on this garment sits very low, so it's designed to be very oversized, and the armhole opening is designed to be pretty big. So the body of the work will come down pretty low underneath your underarm. So just keep that in mind. It might seem surprising how low it comes down, but the armhole opening is very large. You can take a look at the schematic in the pattern to see what the armhole opening is for your size. So I will see you back here when you've completed, or you're going to want to make sure you stop at the end of the round when you've knit to the length that you're supposed to knit to the underarm. Okay, so I've knit to the length I'm supposed to knit to until I'm supposed to separate the front and the back, and make sure when you measure your work, you're measuring it from the bottom all the way up to where you've knit to get the overall underarm length of the body. Okay, so I'm at the end of my round. I'm at the point where I'm at the beginning of round marker. And I just wanted to explain to you what we're gonna do. So remember, we put our stitch marker halfway through our stitches to help us denote the front and the back. Well, we're going to work the back first. And when you work the back, you have to knit it flat back and forth. So we need to separate off the front stitches and put those on a piece of waste yarn to kind of hold them so that we can work them later. We need to make room for our armholes, and in order to do that, we have to separate the front and the back. So we are going to knit across to we're going to knit across the back to this marker. Then we're going to remove these stitches and put them on a piece of waste yarn and then work back and forth for the back. So I'll show you how to do that. So slip the marker and start your row. We're going to knit all the way across to that first stitch marker. We're knitting across the back to that next stitch marker to help us know when we're done with the back stitches. So I'll see you then. Okay, as you can see, I'm almost to that stitch marker. Once I hit the stitch marker, I'm going to remove it. I'm going to put my needles down here for a second. I am going to take a piece of waste yarn that's longer than half of the work, so all of the stitches for the front can fit on them. I'm going to thread it through a tapestry needle here, and now I am going to pick up the work. Our yarn is here. This is where our stitch marker was. We need to put all of these stitches for the front all the way to the beginning of round marker on a placeholder on this waste yarn. So you're going to take the needle and just remove these stitches from your left hand needle, making sure the stitches stay. You can pull this through if you want, just so it sits a little bit better. So these are the front stitches that I am taking off this needle, and this will allow us to work back and forth for the back once we get all of these stitches off. So just continue to lift these stitches off. Make sure you're putting the needle in the work this way, and you're just sliding these stitches on this piece of waste yarn so they have somewhere to sit and you won't drop any stitches while you're working the back of the work. So I'll see you back here when I'm almost done getting all of these stitches on. Okay, as you can see, I'm almost to that stitch marker here. So I'm just going to continue slipping the needles off, or the stitches off the needle here. And then once I get to that stitch marker, you can remove it because you know you're done. You're going to pull this yarn through enough. Make sure you don't pull it all the way through. So you just pull this yarn through, and then you're just going to kind of stretch the stitches out, and you're just going to let the work sit on this waste yarn now. Okay, so the work is sitting on the waste yarn. We divided, half the stitches are still on the needle and half of the stitches are on a piece of waste yarn. So find the side where you have the yarn. So we knit across the back, and you're going to need to probably push the stitches back on the needle here. Okay, now you're going to turn the work and work flat. So we're just going to ignore the stitches that are on the waste yarn right now, and we're just going to work flat now, which means back and forth. So we knit across the back on the right side. Now we're on the wrong side of the work, so we'll be purling back. Okay, so just purl all the way back. So almost done purling here across that row. And then all you do is you drop the needle, turn the work over, turn the work around. Now you're on the right side of the work, so we do another knit row. So we're knitting stockinette flat now, which means we knit on the right side and purl on the wrong side. So then now all you're going to do is look at your pattern and follow the directions for how long you need to continue the stockinette stitch from the underarm. Okay, so you'll just be completing stockinette stitch straight for a certain length, and then we'll stop, and then that will be the top of the back, where the top of the neckline will be and where your shoulder seam will be. Okay, so just keep knitting on the right side and purling on the wrong side for the length your pattern says to knit from the underarm. So you'll be measuring this point where we took off the front stitches. This is the beginning of the underarm. So you're going to be working up, so you'll just measure the length from that underarm, from where you have your waist yarn. All right? Okay, when the back of your work reaches the length specified in the pattern, or the length you would like it to be, it is time to bind off for the back. So you're gonna want to, I usually just specify to bind off on the right side, so that is after you complete a wrong side or a purl row. I'm gonna show you how to bind off on the right side. So we are going to do a simple bind off here, and then we will be seaming the front shoulders to the work. So like I said, we are on the right side. I'm gonna just zoom in here a little bit so you can see how to bind off a little more easily. All right, so you're simply going to knit the first stitch, knit the second stitch, and then slip that first stitch over the stitch you just knit. So we've just bound off one stitch, you knit the next stitch, slip that first stitch over the stitch you just knit. Now we've bound off two stitches. So you continue knitting and binding off a stitch as you go, so you only end up with one stitch on the right hand needle. So continue this all the way across your work, and then I will show you what happens and what to do when you get to the end. All right, I've got a few more stitches left to bind off here. And then once you get to the last stitch, you work it and you slip the stitch over, and you've got one remaining stitch left on your needle. And I'm gonna leave a long enough tail in case I wanna use some of this tail to seam the shoulder. And then you just snip the work, and you take your stitch and you just pull it through. And now you've bound off the back of the work. All right, now you're gonna wanna flip the work over, and we are gonna start the left front. So looking at the work now, if I zoom out here so you can see, the left front refers to this side of the work. It's the left front because when you are wearing the garment, it's on your left side, on your front. And then this part of the garment is considered the right side because when you're wearing it, it's on your right side. All right, now it's time to work the left front. And remember, we placed our front stitches on a piece of waist yarn. So we're gonna be working the left front on half of these stitches. So we need to pick back half of these stitches up off of this waist yarn. So you're gonna wanna start at the left underarm and insert your needle into each stitch here. You can start pulling the yarn out as you go, or you can kind of wait till the end. Just depends like how much room you have. So put back the number of stitches that you're supposed to put back on your needle. It should be half of the stitches on your front, and just work across until you have all of those stitches back on. All right, I've got all my stitches on there. I'm just trying to get the waist yarn out now. And then we will begin by joining. Okay, so I've got all the stitches here. You need to just pull the needle through so that you start on the left underarm. We're gonna join over here on the right side. So when you put your stitches on your needle, you'll have to slide them through so you can work and join the work at the left underarm. Okay, so to join the work, all you do is grab the end of your yarn and you're gonna start knitting. You're just gonna start knitting. That first stitch will be a little loose. You can kind of hold it. So we're gonna knit across that left front for a row. So knit across your stitches that are on your needle. And you can just kind of pull this yarn if it gets loose, and as you continue to work, it will tighten up. But you'll just weave that end in at the end so it won't be loose. So you just knit all the way across. All right, so I'm just finishing row 1 of the left side, which is just simply knit. And then when you get to the end, we're working back and forth, so you just turn the work, and we're just gonna purl back now. So row 2 is purl, purl to the end. Finishing row 2. And then this is where we join the work, so that stitch might be a little loose. You can just pull it. We're going to turn the work, and now we're on row 3 of the left front. And so I just wanted to explain how this is working here. Our V-neck is at the end of the right side row on the left front. So we are going to start decreasing every other right side row once you get to 3 stitches to the end. I know that might sound a little confusing, but we just knit, purled, and now we're knitting again, and then we're going to do a decrease once we are 3 stitches to the end. So I'm on row 3, so I am going to knit all the way across to until I get 3 stitches left. When I have 3 stitches left, we're going to do a decrease to start shaping that V-neck. All right, I've knit all the way across until I have 3 stitches left. Now remember, this is our V-neck here. And so we are going to have the V-neck go up this way, a right-leaning decrease. So I need to create a right-leaning decrease with these 2 stitches. So the reason we knit until 3 stitches to the end is we're going to be picking up stitches here. So we want to have a nice clean edge. So that's why we do it on the last 3 stitches. So you're simply going to just knit 2 together. You just insert your needle through 2 stitches and just knit those. And see now how our stitch kind of leans that way? And then you just simply knit the last stitch. You turn the work and you're gonna purl back. So we do a right leaning decrease every other right side row. So the pattern's written so you can see that, but just to explain it, we just did our decrease. We're gonna purl back, knit back, purl back, and then we have a decrease row every other right side row. So then you'll knit to 3 stitches to the end, and you'll do the knit 2 together again. So that's how you decrease. So you're going to continue following the pattern, decrease the number of times you're supposed to decrease. I'm going to show you in a little bit what it starts to look like once you have those decreases. But you're going to do that decrease row every other right side row. All right, it's time to do another decrease. And you can tell every other row, you can see, here's my previous decrease right here. You can see how the stitches kind of come together there. So that's a decrease row. That was a purl. That was a knit row. This is a purl row. And now I'm on a decrease row. So that just kind of helps you see if you lose track of where you are. So I've got a decrease row, purl, knit, purl, decrease row. And so we do it this way because it just creates more of a gradual decrease and creates a better looking V-neck. All right, so continue on following your pattern, doing your decreases every other right side row until you have the number of stitches you're supposed to have, and your left front is the length it's supposed to be. Okay, so now I've finished my left front, the V-necks, and I've decreased the number of stitches I'm supposed to decrease, and I've continued stockinette stitch for the overall length. that the work is supposed to be. So once you've finished the decreases, you might have a little bit of stockinette stitch to complete, which is just knitting the right side, purling the wrong side until the overall length from the underarm or the overall length of the entire garment reaches the point it's supposed to be for your size, or if you would like to modify that, you know. But basically it needs to be the same length as the back so that when you seam it together at the top meets well. If one side is a tad longer or shorter than the other, that's not a problem because when you seam it, it's okay. But just make sure you're completing the left and right fronts the same length. All right, so I'm just going to show you how to bind off. I'm opting to bind off on the right side here. This length looks good for me. You can bind off on the wrong side if you would like. It really doesn't matter because you're going to be seaming the work anyway. But like I said, I'm going to bind off on the right side here. And it's just the same way we bound off before. I'm just going to knit 2 stitches, slip that first one over the second, and then continue binding off all of the way across. And then you're going to end the work the same way you did previously when we bound off for the top of the back. Whoops. All right, I'm at that last stitch. I've got 1 stitch left. I'm just going to cut a tail, snip it, pull it through. And now we've completed the left front. So we've got our V-neck shaped here for the left front. And now we're going to join the work on the right side and complete the right front. So we're going to just basically do what we did for the left front, but we're going to do a mirror image. So we're going to be decreasing at the beginning of the row on the right front instead of at the end of the row. But we'll be doing the same thing, just kind of mirror image. So we'll have to do our decreases in the opposite direction. So first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you get all of those stitches back on the needle here. And so you're just going to pick up the rest of the stitches from the scrap yarn. All right, I'm making sure I get that last stitch on the needle, and I am going to slide the stitches through, get that waste yarn off, and I'm going to make sure I have my work positioned on the left needle and push these stitches up so I can get ready to work. Now I'm going to bring that needle around and start by joining the yarn at the center V-neck for the right front, and I'm simply going to just start knitting. All right, so same thing, we're going to knit across, purl back, and then we'll do our first decrease row. So I'm going to knit across, purl back, and I will show you when I am at the beginning of row 3 for the right front. So row 1 is knit, row 2 is purl, and then I'll show you the beginning of row 3. Okay, I am at the beginning of row 3, and again, we are at we're at the V-neck. We decreased this way on the left front. We've got to decrease this way on the right front. So we're going to do that on the right side of the work, and we need to just do it at the beginning of the row now instead of the end of the row. So to do this row 3 and all decrease rows, we knit 1, and then we do a slip, slip, knit, and slip, slip, knit is slip 1 stitch as if to knit, slip 1 stitch as if to knit, and then you put the left needle back through those 2 stitches and knit those 2 together. And so now we have a stitch that leans to the left. All right. Then you just knit to the end. And you're going to do that decrease row every other row. And I will see you back here. I'm going to just show you that decrease row one more time in a second after I finish knitting, purl back, knit, purl, and then we've got a decrease row. Again, that is doing the decrease every other right side row. Okay, I'm at the point where I need to do another decrease on the right front here, so I'm just going to show you how to do that one more time at the beginning of the row. And again, we do the decrease every other right side row. So I did one here, there was a purl, knit, purl, and now I'm on the right side. So I knit one, and then I do a slip, slip, knit, slip, slip, knit two together here, and knit to, and then you just knit to the end. All right, so you're gonna wanna complete the right front the same way you did the left front, meaning the same number of decreases, and then the same length for the stockinette stitch, and then you bind off either on the right side or the wrong side of the work. So I'll see you back here when I'm ready to bind off. All right, so I've completed the right front to the same length as the left front, and I am now gonna just bind off just as I always bind off. I'm binding off on the right side of the work here, same way I have before. And then I'm gonna show you how to seam the shoulders, the top of the left and right fronts to the back. So I will see you back here when I've finished binding off the right front and I'm ready to seam. One thing I wanted to mention for the right front, if you bind off on the right side, we are going to be seaming that right front to the top of the works, to the top of the work, and then we're going to be seaming in. So if you want to leave a pretty long tail, I don't know, maybe about 1.5 feet or so, might be a little long. And then you can use this to seam so you don't have to join the yarn. And if you don't have this at the end, that's fine. You can still attach another piece of yarn, but it just helps to kind of conserve what you've got. And so now I'm going to show you how to seam the right front to the back, and then you're going to just repeat and do the same thing to the left front to the back. So I am going to line the work up, and it's best to start on the outside and work in. It just helps everything line up a little bit better, because if you're off a little bit and you start this way, you can end up with things not lining up. So I really suggest starting on the outside and working in for both the left and the right front. So I'm just going to thread my tapestry needle here, and then I'm gonna just show you how to seam everything together. So we've already got the yarn attached here. And again, if you're just using a regular piece of yarn that's not attached, it's fine. You can just weave it through the end, leave a tail, and then you'll just seam it together. So basically, when you look at, when you're seaming, there are V's, right? We're gonna do, we're going to work through a right side up V on the top and a upside down V on the bottom, okay? So this is what I mean. We are going to connect the work here. First, I'm just gonna connect it at the end. Okay, and now I am going to work through an upside down V here. And let me just make sure this is in focus for you. Okay, so I'm going to put my needle through the upside down V right there. Pull it through. Now I'm gonna put my needle through a right side up V up here and pull it through. And now we're going to continue doing that same thing. Right side up V, I'm sorry, upside down V through the bottom, and right side up V on the top. And it doesn't matter, just so you understand, it doesn't matter if you did the right side up V on the bottom. It just needs to be the upside down V on the top, then you just have to alternate. Whatever is on the top has to be different on the bottom. It just helps the stitches to line up correctly so that when you start seaming, it looks seamless. See how that already looks pretty seamless? So right side up on the bottom. And you just continue this all the way across. And then you just tie off the work. So I'll meet you back here when I'm almost done. Okay, I'm almost wrapping this up here. And just want to show you how to end it. I like to kind of end it through the back here. So I'm just going to go through this and just do one and pull this off. And now the work is seamed at the top and it looks kind of seamless here. All right, so you're going to do the same thing for the other side and just seam up the other side, and then we'll be ready for the collar and the armhole ribbing. All right. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do a mitered V-neck. I'm going to turn my work so that the back is facing me and easy to access here. So that's why I've got the work faced upside down. You're going to start by picking up stitches in the center of the back, and you just insert your needle through 2 stitches, or basically it's not 2 stitches, it's just the top of that bind off stitch. So that's what it looks like, and you're going to join the work, wrap the yarn over, and pull this through. Okay, so this will be a little loose. You can kind of keep your hand on it, but you're going to pick up and knit every stitch along the back. So you're going to pick up and knit, and when you pick up and knit, you keep inserting your needle through the top of that stitch here. You want to make sure you're bringing the yarn like in this direction here. So that when you knit, your stitches are facing the right direction. So you just bring it up and over from the bottom and you just pull it through. So you can see that's called picking up and knitting stitches there. Okay, and then you just keep doing that one stitch for every stitch across the back. And then when we get to the left front here of the neckline, we're going to be picking up 3 stitches for every 4 rows. So basically that just will help. You don't want to do a 1-for-1 ratio picking up stitches, because then you'll have too many stitches. I also wanted to mention I'm using the same needle size because I do my 1-by-1 rib pretty tight. If you need to go down a needle size, feel free to do that. Okay, when you're on the left front, this is when you start picking up 3 stitches for every 4 rows. So we're gonna go, I'm not gonna go into this spot because that's just where I connected the work. So we're gonna just do 1, 2, skip a row, so I'm skipping that one spot right there, 3, and then you just keep doing that. 1, 2, skip a row, 3, 1, 2, skip a row, 3. All right, so keep doing that down the left front here, and then I'll show you how I pick up that center stitch once I get down there. Okay, so I've picked up stitches all down that left front, and now to get that center stitch, so some patterns will have you bind off for the center stitch. It makes the math a little funky, so I don't do that. And I didn't do that in this case, but to get that center stitch, I just go through the left bar. So this is actually the center, like this little part right here. And I go through, basically, I pick up the 2 stitches like this. Make sure you can see okay. All right, and then I pick up that stitch like this. So that's actually the center right there. So I went through the bars of either side of that stitch. Let me show you that one more time. Okay. So I know you're kind of looking at this upside down. Maybe it'll help if I do it this way so you can see. We'll turn the work now. Okay. So these are the stitches for the left front, and these are the stitches for the right front. So the center would actually be right here. So I go through the bar, the right bar on the last stitch for the left front, and then just the left bar. So I'm picking up my stitch just like that, and I'm pulling through that way. Okay, that's just how I do it. There's different ways to do it, but that's just how I do it. And then now you do the same thing, going up the right front, picking up 3 stitches for every 4 rows there. So continue on up the right front, and then you're going to pick up a stitch for every stitch until you get to the last stitch here. You want to make sure you have an even number of stitches in the end. So just make sure you're picking up an even number of stitches. That just makes the ribbing a little easier. So I will see you back here when I've picked up the rest of my stitches. Okay, so I have picked up stitches all the way around my V-neck here. I'm going to grab a stitch marker just so I know what the beginning and the end of the round is. And now you're just going to start doing a knit 1, purl 1 rib all the way around. Knit 1, purl 1. And one thing I want to mention, forgot to mention, you want to mark the center stitch just so you know that it's the center stitch. So you can grab a stitch marker, which I will do, and I'm going to just use a removable stitch marker here just so I can see this is my stitch. I'm just going to mark that center stitch just so I know. Okay, so there, I've marked the center stitch. And then you just work the knit 1, purl 1 all the way until you get to 1 stitch before that center stitch. So I'll see you back here then. Okay, so I am 1 stitch before that center stitch, which is marked by the stitch marker. I am going to slip these 2 stitches. One thing to note first. Okay, so I've stopped 1 stitch before the center stitch. I've ended with a knit stitch. Okay, so just know that when you're done working these 3 stitches, you're going to start with a knit. So wherever you start, this could be a knit stitch or this could be a purl stitch, doesn't matter. When we're done with these 3 stitches, we're going to do the same stitch. So we decrease 2 stitches every round here. So I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so just keep this in mind. Remember that this is a knit stitch. If it's a purl stitch, it's fine, but just remember what this is before you stop. Okay, we are going to slip 2 stitches knitwise, as if to knit here. Then you're going to knit the next stitch, and then you're going to insert your needle through both of these stitches and slip them over this 1 center stitch. So this will give you a nice long center stitch here. And then now we complete the same stitch on the other side, so it's mirrored around that center stitch. Okay, it's mirrored around this center stitch. So then we just continue in the pattern. Knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. And you do that, and you continue working for however long you're going to work. I'll show you again once I get back to this center stitch. Okay, I just want to show you I'm nearing the end of the first round here, and you should end with a purl stitch if you have an even number of stitches on. And all you do is just slip the stitch marker and start your knit one, purl one again. So you're just knitting the knits, just purling the purl stitches, and I'll show you again how to do that decrease once I get around to that center V-neck stitch. I've worked all the way around again to one stitch before that center stitch, and you just slip 2 stitches knitwise, knit 1, and then pass those 2 stitches over. And there you go, and now you can see that center stitch is coming together. So the stitch I just did before, the 3 stitches for the center I do after. So it's mirrored on either side, and you just continue that 1 by 1 rib. All right, so continue for the length that you're supposed to continue for the collar, and then I'll show you how to bind off. So I'll meet you back here when it's time to bind off. I've gotten to the point on my ribbing here where it's time to bind off, and all you're gonna do is bind off in the established pattern. So you'll just knit 1, purl 1, and then slip that stitch over and just continue binding off in the pattern, knitting and purling and binding off as you go. And then you're actually going to do the same thing and bind off that you do as you did previously for that V-neck corner. So once I get around to that V-neck, I'll show you how to bind off in that pattern. Okay, I'm 1 stitch before that center stitch, so I've been binding off as I've gone down here. So now we're just going to continue binding off. So I'm going to slip those stitches, knit 1, slip this back over, and then bind off that stitch. And then I complete the next stitch and bind off. So you still just bind off the same way as you would complete a regular round. So continue binding off here in the established 1 by 1 rib pattern, and I'll see you back here at the end. Okay, I'm just about done binding off for the neck here, and I'm going to complete the last bind off stitch, snip the yarn with a little bit of a tail. And I just want to show you how to finish this off, because when you knit the 1 by 1 rib, you're going to have this like gap towards the end, because you kind of need to still connect the beginning and the end of the round. So I'm going to thread my tapestry needle here and just show you what I do to kind of close that up. So I basically insert my needle through like this and bring it back around and through the work like that, and it just kind of closes it up, and then you can weave this yarn back through, and this will get rid of your end here. Just pull this down and through, and then you've woven in your first end there. So there you go. And just pull it back a little bit, and then you can snip the yarn. All right, so we've finished our V-neck here. You can see what it looks like now. Nice and big. You can remove the stitch marker. And then now you're going to complete the armholes, which will be much easier after you've done this V-neck. Now that you've done the V-neck, you'll be able to do the armhole ribbing much more easily. So you're going to want to grab your 24-inch circular needles to pick up stitches for the armhole. Okay, I got my needles. So same thing, pick up stitches. You're going to start at the armhole, and on one side you're just going to insert your needle and attach the yarn. Leave a little bit more of a tail here, and you're going to pull that first stitch through. I know it's awkward, You can pull it taut a little bit and hold it, and then it's 1, 2, skip a stitch, 3. You're going to pick up stitches the same way as you did for the neckline. 1, 2, skip a stitch, 3. Same way, okay? So we're working perpendicularly to the work here, so we need to skip some rows so that our work lays flat when we are picking up stitches horizontally. So continue this all the way around. Mark with a stitch marker. Make sure you have an even number of stitches, and then complete 1 by 1 rib for the length you're supposed to complete it, and then bind off in the 1 by 1 rib. All right? Okay, so I've picked up all of my stitches here for the sleeve, and I'm just going to show you how to join in the round too. And I'm joining in the round here. I didn't really do that at the back of the neckline because the stitches are pretty tight when you pick up along a finished edge, like the cast on edge. So I'm just going to show you how I'm going to join the work in the round here. I've got my stitch marker handy. All right, so I just kind of twist my stitches. So I am going to slip that first stitch, slip the first stitch. Let me this. I'm going to slip this first stitch and then bring this one over it. And then I'm going to twist that. It just creates a little bit neater, and you can pull the tail here. And then put your stitch marker on, and then you just start your knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. All right, so that's how I join in the round at the underarm. So again, you're just going to continue the ribbing just like you did previously, and until you get to the length you're supposed to, the pattern calls for, and then you will bind off in the 1 by 1 rib and finish the work off like I just showed you for the V-neck with that tapestry needle. All right, so you can go back and watch that again if you need to. But I'll see you back here when I'm done with the ribbing for the sleeve. All right, I just finished making the ribbing for the armholes here, and now it's just time to weave in ends. So you can go back through, I showed you how to connect the ribbing, but you can go through and seam up any gaps at the armholes, anything like that. Just weave in your ends. When you weave in ends, all you want to do is take your yarn and follow it through, you know, follow it through the other yarn. You just want to make it seem kind of invisible here. So I just go like this up through the stitches, and then, you know, if I have yarn near my seams, I'll just use the seam to weave the yarn back through, the ends back through. All right, and then you can just stretch it out and snip that, pull it back. All right, so hope you enjoyed making this. It's looking pretty good. If you want to block it, feel free to block it. I usually steam block my synthetic yarn. I've got a video for that you can watch, but hope you enjoyed making this.